Now, you have proposed this a couple of different times, and it perplexes me because I'm just not of the it's okay to lose mentality. And I'm certainly not of the mentality that you advocate losing. But you legitimately think that teams should try to lose the conference championship games. Caleb, I'm going to give you an opportunity to convince me before I say
that's crazy.
So, and I'm going to give you a fair opportunity at it. So go for it. What do you got?
All right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start by saying this before any of you guys called me a liberal commie. You're defending the institution of college football that literally has a system designed to punish success. College football punishes success and rewards failure. Okay. And let me tell you how it punishes success.
Okay.
If you go win your conference championship game, you have a tougher road to the national title than if you lose your conference championship game. That is the very definition of punishing success. And so when Oregon goes and plays Penn State this weekend, and when Georgia goes and plays Texas, let's just take Oregon and Penn State. If Oregon wins, oh, congratulations, they beat Penn State. Now they get a first round bye. In the second round, they're going to have to play Tennessee or Ohio State on a neutral field in the Rose Bowl. If Oregon loses, you know what they get to do, Dave?
Lay it on me.
They get to play Arizona State at home in the first round. And then they get to play Boise State on a neutral field in the second round, maybe SMU. Dave, would you rather play Tennessee or Ohio State once or Arizona State at home and then Boise State on a neutral field?
Okay, I'm going to tell you that if this were basketball, I think you would have a better argument. But given that it's football, no, I'm not going to add an extra game. I think that in and of itself, that's where you and I are going to differ philosophically. In and of itself, I think adding a football game is much more difficult. And so I would not want to do that. So you're not going to be able to convince me otherwise.
You are adding a football game, though. Because, Dave, here's the problem. To get that bye, Oregon has to beat Penn State, right?
Yes.
Isn't that the extra football game?
Well, the conference, but they have to be in the conference.
So here's my point.
You're saying?
If they rest all their starters this weekend, if I'm Oregon, I rest all of my starters. That's a bye, right? At that point, that's the same as a bye. You're not playing the game with your starters.
Okay, so you're saying be overt about it. Don't put your now. That to me is akin to some sort of big monstrous revolt. I mean, that you're going to get fined. You're going to get God.
How are you going to get fined? What are you doing? You're not breaking any rules. You're looking out for the best of your team. I did not destroy the conference championship games. Oregon, Georgia, and Texas. If I'm Georgia, I'm not. Carson Beck's not seeing the field this weekend. Okay, if I'm Texas, this is a great time to get Arch Manning a little more development. If I'm Texas,
now, hold on. Again, you're going down a basketball path because if you're going to throw them out there, if you're going to throw Arch Manning out there, you have to have the starters around him to properly evaluate him and protect him. So it's not as simple as just one guy.
No, you haven't played with the backup.
You either go mass subs or you don't sub at all and you go my way and try to win.
I'm going mass subs. And if Arch Manning gets wrecked, then he learns a little bit about the difficulties of playing football, which is good for him too. I'm saying, you know what? I'm putting either all my backups in. I'm dead serious. If I'm Texas or Oregon, I'm putting all of my backups in, not even trying to win, or crazy enough, Red Bull, you water boy, how you like my new offense? I'm kneeling it 3 times and punting. And then I am just playing a prevent defense and not trying to tackle.
Steve says shelf the conference championship games. I think we're going in that direction.
No, we're not.
Well, not until they find another way to replace the revenue is what I was going to say. If they find some other way to replace the revenue, then quite possibly. And I tell you what, I wouldn't be against, those preseason classic games that they used to have. Remember those?
Yes.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. Here's the bottom line. You have teams playing a different number of games leading into the national tournament. That's the ultimate problem, isn't it?
It's a huge problem. And this is the issue. And so, like, okay, if you're Oregon or Georgia or Texas, maybe Georgia, because if you're Georgia, you may try to win because you don't know if the committee is going to punish you for a loss. They say they won't, but you really can't take them seriously. But if you're Texas or Oregon, you know you'll at worst be a 5 or a 6 seed. Why even try to win? Because you have to win the conference championship game to get that bye, or you could just not play in the conference championship game, which would count as the bye. It works either way, and you get an easier road. I'm sorry. Throw it. Tank it. Oregon, Texas, if you're listening to me, throw the championship game this weekend. Make Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti look like idiots because they have been ridiculous with how they've set up this playoff format.
Our poll question is up now, brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo and the gang that Dave Hooker and Caleb Calhoun said, "Hey, Bo, so will you watch conference championship games?" Yes, great football, 84%. No, they're like old bowl games now, 16%. So the interest is there. If you were to kill that golden goose that only happens once a year, and we're talking about conference championship games, that's the way to kill it. I mean, you just basically, if you do what you do, if you're talking about, you run over it, you back over the goose, and then you run over it again. I used to have a buddy that would do that on the back roads when he saw a snake because he hated snakes.
All right, so I got a question about if you were to agree with me on this, would your strategy? And I know you don't because you're like, you gotta try to win every game, you gotta play hard all the time.
I've never spoken like that, not one time.
If you're me, Dave, if you agree with me, how would you throw it? Would you do like Rick Barnes in the basketball tournament last year and just be like, we're going to have a very bare game plan of not really trying to win? Or would you would you openly throw it?
There are two. Well, I guess I'd openly throw it because I wouldn't put my players in jeopardy. If I had to choose, like if the athletic director came down and said, you have to throw this game because we can make some sort of protest and change and get rid of this stupid thing so that we're all on the same playing field, then no, I'm not even putting my players out there. I'm certainly not doing what Rick Barnes did, which was, I think, a pretty simplistic approach to the SEC tournament, because you're more likely to get hurt in football. I can't look a man in the eye and say, go out there and battle for me, and sorry if you get hurt, because we're running the most vanilla, pathetic game plan of all time, and everybody's going to know what you're doing, and you're going to get ear-holed and decleated over and over and over. I can't do that.
Okay, so what about this? Okay, so would you forfeit, or would you just put all your backups in?
Well, I mean,
I would actually consider forfeiting. I would just say I'm not going to show up and I forfeit. You guys can have this. I don't want it.
Okay, let's get Ollie Lane's thoughts on this. We're actually going to talk to Ollie Lane about road games, and should Tennessee be concerned at all about possibly going on the road to play Ohio State, because Tennessee hasn't been the best road team. But first, Ollie, thank you for joining us. How are you, sir?
No, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Great. I think we can all agree that the conference championship game is a little wanky now with the way the college football playoff works. But can you ever imagine throwing a game?
No, I mean, I couldn't imagine just going out and throwing a game, and especially maybe not this soon. I could see it some, like, obviously in basketball, because it's different. It's a different kind of environment. But I mean, with football, it's just like there's still a lot that's tied to this championship game for some teams to like be able to get into the playoffs. But then too, it's just like it's a pride thing. I think football wise, it's just like you can't go out there and throw a game. You're never going to feel good about yourself if you don't give all you got into a single game. But I mean, I'm with you guys. I don't think the championship games really have a place in college football anymore. They were great. It's a lot of fun. I mean, especially the SEC championship game, you know, that's the pinnacle of conference championships. But they just, with how long seasons are now and the way they're trying to structure everything, it just doesn't make sense. Whoever's got the best record in the conference, here's a little conference championship. You win. You're the best in the conference, and let's move along. But I mean, especially like I've been talking with a bunch of people this week. It's just like man, it's just such a long season for these kids. And I mean, granted, when you're in the pros, you're playing these long seasons because that's what you get paid for. That's all your focus is for the entire year. But I mean, with college kids, you got school, you got all this other stuff that's going on. That on top of that, you got to throw. Well, now we're throwing 4 or 5 more games onto you. So I mean, that's not really a good way to go about it. I mean, I think if you eventually just get rid of the conference championships itself, you'd probably have more longevity to be able to handle some of these injury stuffs that happen throughout the year. And I mean, you're just giving them more time to be more competitive when they get to the playoffs. Because I mean, you're going to see some teams, I'm sure, that are just tired by the time they hit game 2 or game 3 in the playoffs. And it's not even a talent issue. It's just hey, we're tired. It's been a long season, and these guys haven't had to play this long, this deep before.
Okay, Ollie, let me ask you this: if you were still playing and Tennessee was in the SEC championship game, would it be hard to get focused knowing that really your seeding's kind of already set? I mean, I think that Georgia can drop some, but I don't think they're going to drop below Tennessee. I think Oregon can drop some, but they're not going to drop that far, just because of I think the college football playoff pretty much has their mind made up.
Yeah, I mean, the only motivation for me to win that game is just to get that bye. I mean, if you win the game and you get that automatic top 4 seed in the bye, I mean, that's really big, especially gives you an extra week to kind of take a breath and know that you're in a solidified spot to at least hit a bowl game that's structured in the playoffs. That's the one thing, too, that I haven't understood yet with how these playoffs are structured. These teams that go in the first round and lose at one of the either at home or at another place, is there a bowl gift reward type thing that goes into that, or is the season done? Congratulations to making it on the playoffs. You don't get anything. You had to get to the second round when the bowl games come into a factor to get the rewards that you get for having a good season, because that was always the biggest thing about going to the bowl game is you get rewards, you get gifts, presents, stuff like that. I mean, that was the big part of the motivation for a bowl game to get to bowl games is to get that kind of stuff. So seems like a raw deal to me for some of these teams that are going to lose in the first round. You don't get anything. You just pat on the back. Congratulations, you made it to the playoffs.
I hadn't thought about that. Did you? Yeah. What's the best bowl gift you ever got, Ollie?
I don't know. I mean, the Orange Bowl had a lot of really good gifts. I still use. I got a nice little gaming monitor from there that I use all the time. But I've gotten. It's just a bunch of cool little like nidbit stuff. Like when we went to Tax Slayer Bowl, like I got this giant, huge scrapbook thing of like all the history of the bowl games, and then I've always got a nice little bowl watch that goes with it. I mean, it's just the little things that go along with it that make it interesting and fun to be a part of it. Get some memorabilia from being in those kind of games.
I feel like if you go to the Tax Slayer Bowl, that bowl should just agree to pay every player's taxes for the next 10 years.
Yeah, right. Just hey, we'll do free tax returns for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
well, with NIL, it's not the worst idea in the world.
No, not at all.
Ollie, let me just push back on you on the bye real quick, because here's my issue with the bye and the whole concept of it. Because that's what they're trying to tell you. They're trying to put up this facade of, if you win your conference championship game, you get the bye. Or you could just not play your conference championship game, which is a bye on its own.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of either way, you have to play an extra game, right?
No, I mean, you're not wrong. But I mean, it's just, to me, especially like if you hit that conference championship, if you're still in a position where you're not in the conference championship, now you're kind of guessing if you're going to get in or not get into the playoffs. But I feel like if you get that conference championship, I don't see the committee just dropping out runner-ups that have decent records. So, I mean, maybe that's another tie-in to it, that they're not going to drop out the conference runner-up in those championship games. But, I mean, they're going to have to, like you said, make it a little bit more enticing to want to continue to play these kind of games, because in the future it's going to wear out a lot of these kids, and how long these seasons are going to get drawn out.
We were able to get a quote from Peyton Manning and his thoughts on Caleb Calhoun's just throwing bowl games. Peyton, what did you have to say?
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Let me ask you guys just this real quick, and I, this is actually more David, Ali. I'd love your thoughts too. I'm going to give 2 coaches, and you tell me if you think that they would just be willing to outright show up the SEC by not even trying to win and just kneeling 3 times and punting or even forfeiting. Lane Kiffin, would he do it?
That's the only one.
That's the only one that I could think of, because I've already heard him talk about that in a press conference somewhere. But that's probably the only one that I would think of.
What about, and Dave, more for you, Steve Spurrier? Come on, he would do it.
No, Ollie, I think, and I'm a little older, he'd
Mhm.
grop about it all week and he'd say it was stupid and that might undermine his team's desire, but he's too much of a competitor. He was bragging at SEC Media Days a couple of years ago. He was bragging about how the Apollo Knights in the All-American Football League, do you remember that short-lived
Mhm.
thing? He's bragging about how they still had the most wins and he's waiting on his trophy. And he was being dead serious. Ollie, he was
I
like,
bet he was.
Still don't have my trophy. Still don't have it. Still, I'm waiting on my trophy. And we had the most wins. So no, he wouldn't do it.